I told my dad he won't be walking me down the aisle because I never healed from discovering his affair when I was 13. Now half my relatives think I'm being cruel, but I refuse to go with the flow. Ever since I was a little girl, I dreamed of my wedding day. Not the dress, not the flowers, not even the venue, just one moment, my dad walking me down the aisle. That was the image I clung to. The safety of it, the tradition, the idea that no matter what, my father would be there, guiding me toward the next chapter of my life. But dreams are funny like that. They don't account for the damage that reality can do. Now I'm 26 and I'm getting married this fall. And as the planning ramped up, dress fittings, catering tastings, guest lists, I realized I couldn't do it. I couldn't let my father walk me down the aisle. Not after what happened when I was 13. Not after the secret I carried, the silence I was coerced into, and the damage that never really healed. I'm not writing this for pity. I'm writing this because I need to say it out loud, for the first time in years, and because everyone around me seems to have an opinion, whether they know the full story or not. When I was 13, I found out my father was cheating on my mother. It wasn't an accident. I wasn't snooping. I was using the family computer to print out a book report, and his email was open. There were messages. Photos, flirty, explicit, and painful to read even now in my memory. The woman was 23. I remember her name. I remember her face. The affair wasn't a fling. It had been going on for nearly a year. I remember shaking as I scrolled. I was just a kid, old enough to understand betrayal, but too young to know what to do with it. I didn't go to my mom. I went to him. I confronted my dad alone. I still don't know why. Maybe I thought he'd fix it. Maybe I was scared of breaking the family. Either way, I'll never forget what he said. "Please don't tell your mother. You don't understand what's going on between us. It's complicated." He cried. I cried. And I agreed to stay quiet for a while. I carried that secret like a stone in my stomach for months. It changed me. I stopped sleeping, stopped talking at school. I felt like I was part of the betrayal just for knowing and not saying anything. Eventually, he got caught. Not because of me, I never told. But he slipped up. Or maybe he just stopped hiding it. Either way, the truth came out and it wrecked my mother. She collapsed into herself. She started sleeping all day. Quit her job. I'd never seen her cry so much in my life, and to this day I don't think she ever fully recovered. He married the woman, the one from the emails. She's my stepmom now. I use the term loosely. And now here we are, planning my wedding. My father's been trying to be involved, asking about the venue, making awkward dad jokes about paying for the bar, just assuming, that he'd walk me down the aisle like none of that ever happened. Last month I finally told him, I want my older brother to walk me instead. The look on his face, like I'd slapped him. He asked why. I told him the truth. I haven't healed from what he did, and I won't fake a moment of closeness we don't actually have. He said I was being unfair, that he's tried to make amends, that people make mistakes. My stepmom even called me crying, saying I was punishing him forever for something he regrets. Now half my family thinks I'm bitter. My grandma said I'm being disrespectful. A cousin uninvited herself, but my fiancé is on my side. My friends are too. They keep saying, it's your day, your choice, and yet I still feel that guilt creeping in. I still hear that 13-year-old girl in the back of my mind asking if she's making everything worse just by speaking up. I don't want drama at my wedding, but I also don't want to fake a father-daughter moment that doesn't exist. Not anymore. Update 1. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just told my mom the second I found out. If I had taken screenshots, printed the emails, stood in front of her and said, look, he's lying to you? But I didn't, because I was 13, because I was scared, because the man I trusted more than anyone, my dad, asked me to protect his secret. And I did. For months. That secret rotted inside me like poison. Every time my mom kissed him goodnight, every time she laughed at a stupid joke he told over dinner, I felt like a traitor. But I also felt responsible, like it was my job to keep things from falling apart, even though I didn't break them. My grades dropped. I stopped hanging out with friends. I'd sit in my room, headphones in, but never listening to music, just trying to drown out the noise in my head. And still, I said nothing. I think what finally broke me wasn't even the cheating. It was watching my mom unravel when the truth finally came out. not because of me, but because he slipped up, left his phone out, and she saw a message pop up. I remember her scream. I remember her calling out my dad's name like she was trying to wake someone from a nightmare. I remember the way she collapsed onto the floor when he said, "It's not what you think," but it was. It was exactly what she thought. She cried for days, slept on the couch, didn't eat. At one point I brought her water and she looked at me like she didn't even know who I was. I wanted to tell her then. I wanted to say, I knew. But I couldn't. I was afraid she'd blame me. Or worse, that I was the reason it hurt so much. Because if I'd told her sooner, maybe it wouldn't have gone on so long. Therapy helped. Years of it. I learned that I wasn't to blame, that I was just a kid caught in an impossible situation. But knowing that doesn't erase the memories. It doesn't undo the way my father looked me in the eye and asked me to protect his feelings over my mother's well-being. He moved out. A few months later, he moved in with her, the other woman. Her name's Rachel, and she's now my stepmother, though she's only 13 years older than me. I tried being civil, I really did. When they got married, I even went to the wedding. I was 16. I wore a nice dress, smiled in the pictures, said congratulations through gritted teeth. My mom didn't go. She couldn't. She spent that day in bed with the blinds drawn. Over the years, my dad kept trying to play the long game. Family holidays, birthday cards, random texts like thinking of you or hope you're doing well. Always casual, always like we were still a family, just reconfigured. I kept my distance, not out of spite, but self-preservation. I didn't want a fake relationship. I didn't want surface-level forgiveness. I wanted him to own it, to say, what I did broke you. I should never have asked you to carry that weight. But he never did. He'd say things like, I've made mistakes, or we've all moved on, but never anything that sounded like genuine accountability. It was like he wanted to skip the chapter where I got to be angry. Go straight to the happy ending without reading the fine print. So when I got engaged, I knew the father-daughter moment would come up eventually. But for a while, I let myself imagine it anyway. The aisle, the music, my hand on his arm, a symbolic reunion. But the closer the wedding got, the less it felt like closure, and more like a performance. And I didn't want to perform. I didn't want to pretend we had a bond that was never repaired. I didn't want to stand there in front of 100 people and lie. So I asked my older brother, Matt, if he'd walk me down the aisle instead. Matt's always been my safe place. He's 5 years older, lives out of state, but we're close. He was the one who held me when I broke down after our parents' divorce. The one who came home from college early to help take care of our mom. The one who didn't ask questions when I texted him late at night during my darkest moments. When I asked him, he didn't hesitate. I'd be honored, he said. But are you sure? You know Dad's gonna take it hard. I nodded, I'm sure. But I wasn't ready for how hard he'd take it. The conversation with my dad was brutal. I told him face to face I wanted to be respectful. I thought honesty might be enough. I've decided to ask Matt to walk me down the aisle. He blinked, confused. What? Why? I took a deep breath, because I never healed from what happened, and I don't want to pretend in front of everyone that we have a relationship we don't. He looked like I'd slapped him, genuinely stunned. I've tried, haven't I? I've shown up. I've been there. But you've never apologized. Not really. You've never taken responsibility for what you put me through. I made a mistake, he said, voice rising. I've paid for it. And now you're punishing me for the rest of my life? I didn't respond. I just walked away. The next day, Rachel, my stepmom, called me in tears, told me I was cruel, that I was ripping the family apart over a moment of weakness that happened over a decade ago. She begged me to reconsider, said my dad deserved to walk me down the aisle, but I deserved to feel safe on my wedding day, and right now, that matters more than his pride. Update 2. I thought that once I told my dad, that would be the worst of it. I told myself he might be hurt, but he'll get over it. I really believed that. But what I didn't count on was how quickly things would spiral, not just with him, but with the entire family. It started with a text from my grandma 2 days later. She doesn't usually get involved in drama, as she puts it. She's old school. Think casserole dinners, handwritten birthday cards, and family first. Stitched onto a throw pillow in her living room. So when I saw her name pop up, I hoped it was neutral. I was wrong. Hi, sweetheart. I heard about the wedding decision. I know your father made mistakes, but you're being disrespectful. He's still your dad. I just stared at the message for a while. I didn't even know how to respond. Disrespectful? For not faking a relationship that doesn't exist? For choosing not to hand my father a moment of public absolution he never earned? I didn't respond immediately. I needed time. But that silence, just like when I was 13, turned into its own accusation. Soon after, my cousin Kayla messaged me. She said she was just checking in, but asked if what she heard was true, that I'd banned my father from walking me down the aisle. The word hit me like a slap. I didn't ban him, I replied. I asked my brother instead. But that's kind of the same thing, isn't it? She sent back. You're making a statement. Yes, I was making a statement. That I wasn't going to pretend. That I wasn't going to reward someone for hurting me and then skipping the hard part of making it right. But I didn't say any of that. I just left her on read. The real explosion happened in the family group chat. It was started years ago for birthdays and sharing baby pictures. We all mostly ignored it. But suddenly, everyone had something to say. My aunt chimed in first. I just think it's sad when people can't let go of old grudges. Weddings are supposed to be joyful. Then a second cousin I barely speak to. He's tried. You just don't want to forgive him. And finally my dad himself, which stunned me. He hadn't spoken directly since our confrontation. But there it was. I made mistakes. I know that. But I've never stopped loving you. I wanted to be there for you, and you've chosen to shame me instead. That broke something in me. Because what he was doing, whether he realized it or not, was turning the narrative around, making himself the wounded party. Painting my boundaries as cruelty. I typed out a long response, deleted it, typed another. Finally, I wrote, You say you've tried, but you've never once acknowledged what it did to me to carry your secret. You never asked me what it cost me. You just wanted to move on and pretend we were okay. I'm not shaming you. I'm protecting myself. If that makes me the villain, so be it. Then I muted the chat. The next few days were a blur of guilt, anxiety, and second-guessing. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. I started losing sleep. I cried more than I'd cried in years. I talked to my therapist about it. She reminded me that boundaries feel like punishment to people who are used to having none. That choosing your own well-being often looks like cruelty to those who've benefited from your silence. But it didn't make it easier. Even Matt, who had agreed without hesitation to walk me down the aisle, started to worry. You sure you still want to do this? He asked one night over the phone. It's your wedding. You don't want this to turn into a battlefield. He wasn't wrong. Part of me did want peace, wanted to just give in and let my dad have the moment so we could all move on. But I also knew that doing that would erase everything I'd worked for. All the therapy, all the healing, all the effort I'd made to stop living like a hostage to my own guilt. I told Matt, this isn't about revenge. It's about truth. I need the person who walks me down that aisle to be someone who saw me when I was broken. And that's not Dad. He just said, then let's do it your way. I started getting texts from relatives saying they were thinking about not attending, that they didn't want to be in the middle of family drama. Even Rachel, my stepmom, sent one last message. You'll regret this one day. Weddings are about forgiveness. I didn't respond. Because here's what no one seems to understand. I've already forgiven my dad, at least as much as I'm capable of. I don't hate him. I don't want him to suffer. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. Forgiveness doesn't mean a front row seat at my healing. Forgiveness doesn't mean I owe him a symbolic role in the biggest moment of my life. So I stayed firm. I let the invitations go out as planned. I left his name off the program. I chose peace over performance. And in doing that, I chose myself. Update 3. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found myself alone in my childhood bedroom for the first time in years. My mom had asked me to help clean out the closet. She was finally ready to part with some of the things she'd been holding on to, emotionally and literally. She handed me a box marked Anna, Middle School, and walked out of the room with a tired smile. No pressure. No questions. I sat cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by pieces of the girl I used to be. Old sketchbooks, birthday cards, notes passed between friends, and at the very bottom, a purple spiral notebook, one I hadn't seen in over a decade. It was my journal. I opened it. The handwriting was messy. The pages were full of angsty half-poems and dream wedding sketches, most of which were cringeworthy. But then I found the entries. The ones written during the year everything fell apart. I found emails on Dad's account today. I don't know what to do. My stomach hurts. He told me not to tell. I promised. I think I'm going to be sick. Mom hugged him tonight. I had to leave the room. I think I'm a bad daughter. I stopped reading after that. My hands were shaking. I closed the notebook and just sat there in silence, staring at the little pile of teenage grief in my lap. That was the moment it hit me. The moment it all clicked. I had already walked down an aisle alone. When I was 13, I carried my father's secret like it was my own. I walked through years of silence, of therapy, of rebuilding my own identity while pretending I wasn't still hurt. I walked through school dances and birthdays and graduations without ever really letting myself feel angry, because I didn't want to rock the boat. I walked through rooms full of people who never knew the story, pretending I was fine. I didn't need him to walk me down the aisle now, because I'd already made the hardest walk of my life by myself, and I survived it. Later that night, I took that journal and wrote a letter to my dad. Not to mail, just to write. A kind of emotional purge. I don't hate you, but I can't pretend anymore. I lost something the day you asked me to protect your secret. Not just trust, but my voice. You didn't mean to take it from me, but you did. This wedding is the first time I get to speak my truth without shame, and I'm not giving that up for a photo op. I folded the letter and put it in the back of the journal. A part of me hoped he'd find it one day. Another part hoped he never would. The next day I called my mom and told her I was ready. Ready for what? She asked softly. To walk into my wedding without regrets. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You already did the hard part. Now go enjoy what's yours." And for the first time since the drama started, I believed her. Update 4. The morning of the wedding, I felt calm. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't. The florist was late. One of the groomsmen split his pants. My cousin Kayla bailed last minute with a text that read, "Hope you have a nice day, despite everything." But I didn't care, because I wasn't walking into that day trying to please anyone. I wasn't performing forgiveness or pretending my family was something it wasn't. I was showing up as myself, flaws, history, boundaries, and all. When the music started and I stepped into the hallway of the venue, I saw Matt standing there waiting for me in his suit. He looked nervous and proud, like he wasn't sure whether to give me a fist bump or a hug. I gave him both. "You ready?" he asked. "More than I've ever been," I said. We walked down the aisle slowly, deliberately. I could feel every eye on us, some warm, some judgmental, some unreadable. My father was there, sitting in the third row, next to Rachel. He didn't smile. Didn't scowl either. Just watched. And for once, I didn't look away. He looked older than I remembered, smaller, somehow. But I didn't feel small anymore. When Matt placed my hand into my fiancé's and gave me the nod, I felt a deep, quiet peace settle into my chest. I had made the right choice. The ceremony was beautiful, honest, joyful. No fake speeches, no passive-aggressive toasts, just love. Real, earned love. After the reception, as things were winding down, my father approached me. "Congratulations," he said. "It was a lovely ceremony." "Thank you," I replied. I didn't add anything. I didn't apologize for how I handled things. I didn't explain myself. Because I didn't need to. He hesitated, then added, "You look just like your mother did on our wedding day." I wasn't sure if that was meant to be sweet or sad. Maybe both. I gave a small smile and turned back to the dance floor, where my husband was spinning our niece in circles to the sound of Stevie Wonder. That was the last conversation I had with my dad that night. Some people noticed he didn't give a toast. Some asked why. I just shrugged and said, "Not everything needs to be said out loud." And that's the truth. Some wounds don't heal into fairy tales. Some families don't reconcile under twinkle lights. Some choices will always hurt a little, even when they're right. But as I lay in bed that night, my husband snoring softly beside me and my makeup still smudged at the corners of my eyes, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt free. Not vindicated, not triumphant, just free. Update 5. Hey Reddit, I didn't think I'd be back with an update, but it's been a few months since the wedding, and a lot of you asked what happened afterward, so here it is. The wedding went exactly how I hoped it would. No, scratch that, it went better. Not because everything was perfect. Spoiler, it wasn't, but because it was real. I didn't fake anything. I didn't let guilt or pressure rewrite my story. My brother walked me down the aisle, and it was one of the most emotional, grounding moments of my life. There wasn't a dry eye in the first 3 rows, including my own. My dad was there, sitting quietly with Rachel, my stepmom. He didn't stand up. He didn't interrupt. He didn't make a scene. He just sat and watched, and I honestly appreciated that. I was bracing for drama, and there was none, at least not that day. After the wedding, we didn't speak. He left before the final dance. No hug, no goodbye. I saw him out of the corner of my eye as he slipped out the side door. It hurt more than I expected, but it also gave me a kind of strange peace. Maybe he realized the moment didn't belong to him. Or maybe he just couldn't bear being there without being at the center of it. A week later, I got a letter from him in the mail. A real, handwritten letter. He said he'd cried during the ceremony, that it was beautiful, and that he was proud of me. Then he said he was sorry, really sorry, for the way he'd handled everything, not just when I was 13, but in the years that followed. He said he thought keeping his distance would make things easier, but he realized too late that all it did was make me feel abandoned twice over. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He didn't ask for another chance. He just said that if I ever wanted to talk, he'd be here. No expectations, no guilt trips, and for the first time in years, I believed him. I haven't responded. Not yet. I'm still processing. In the meantime, other family members have fallen strangely silent. A few who were loudest in criticizing me before the wedding haven't said a word since. No apologies, no acknowledgments, just quiet. I don't know if they're embarrassed or if they still think I was wrong. Either way, I'm not chasing approval anymore. My grandma sent a thank you card a month after the wedding. She didn't mention the father-daughter issue at all. Just wrote, "The photos were beautiful. I'm glad I came." That's about as close to an olive branch as she gets. As for Rachel, my stepmom, she hasn't reached out at all, which is probably for the best. And me, I'm good. Married life is lovely, messy, and filled with laughter. My husband has been my rock through all of this. The night we got our wedding photos back, he pulled up one of the shots of me walking with my brother and said, "You looked so sure of yourself." And I did. I was. It's easy to second-guess choices when the noise around you is loud. But if I could go back, I'd make the same decision all over again. Because that day was mine, and the silence I carried for so long, the one that started when I was a scared little girl protecting a man who didn't protect her, ended with that walk down the aisle. So no, I didn't have the traditional moment, but I had a truthful one. And that in the end mattered more. Thanks to everyone who told me I wasn't crazy or cruel or cold. You reminded me that protecting your peace isn't petty. It's necessary. And if my dad ever truly wants a relationship with me, one rooted in honesty and not just nostalgia, he knows where to find me.